read, good sirrah?
Right. So, another classic. I decided to...
I'm getting the down the gutter clip ready.
No, well...
No, am I wrong?
For two of them. So I read short stories by Franz Kafka. Two of them suck. They're honestly the worst things I've read for this show. Right, alright, we want to have some fun, let's do it. Okay, so I have a book of short stories, there's 6 of them in here. I got through 3 of them and I'm like, I can't do anymore. This is hard. So, let's talk about the ones that go down the gutter first. I read one that's called The Great Wall of China, which does have an X next to it, so I might have wanted to take something from that. I wasn't sure exactly why there were X's in this book next to some of the names, but even the one after that, called Investigations of a Dog, does not have an X, and deserves one. Right. So, Great Wall of China. There's basically... I read one paragraph from it earlier, and it describes the whole 20 pages. The Great Wall of China was built piecemeal, 500 yards at a time. There were gaps in it, and that's pretty much the whole story. I don't understand what I'm supposed to get from this story whatsoever. It's from the perspective of, like, some Chinese peasant, I guess. Like, I'll just read the beginning of, like, the second part here. During the building of the wall, and ever since to this very day, I have occupied myself almost exclusively with the comparative history of races. There are certain questions which one can probe to the marrow, as it were, only by this method, and I have discovered that we Chinese possess certain folk and political institutions that are unique in their clarity, others again unique in their obscurity. What is any of that saying? Chinese are different. Okay, what do you... Tell me a story. There's not a single bit of dialogue in this entire thing. It's 20 pages, but I was done by the end of it.
Am I vindicated when I always complain about the books with no dialogue and that they're harder to get through? You've seen this now.
Sort of, but we'll get there. We'll get with the last story, the third story, because that one did not actually have much dialogue, but was pretty good.
Okay.
This one is just... Tell me something interesting, have something happen.
Anything can be good or bad depending on, if it's just an amazing story, but not having the dialogue makes it so much harder. And if it's bad and doesn't have dialogue, it's like, I just can't.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But the thing is, there is no story. It's not a story.
There's also no plot.
Yeah. They call it a short story, but there's no story.
Short
it's just
piece of text.
No, it's a short idea. It's almost like a philosophy. I really didn't like that one. That one absolutely deserved to be down the gutter. The next one Yes, play it again for this next one.
Okay. Second story.
Second story. Investigations of a Dog. It had 2 of the 43 pages that I liked. Twice as long.
That's like a 3.5% success rate.
Yeah. It was almost as bad. There were at least some things that I thought were a little bit better. One of them was talking about a philosophy things seem to maybe be getting better generation after generation. People are starting to at least become more advanced, but pointed...
A 4.5% success rate.
Okay, thank you. But the other thing is, he says that it should not be honored with people... with the elderly. It should be pitiful. Because you learn so much more, you become sadder, and you wish you had never learned what you know now. It's much more honorable to be young and not know those types of things, which I think is actually a very interesting idea, and was discussed for one page, or maybe even a paragraph.
It's something that you don't hear a lot. It's always honoring, the people with experience and that kind of stuff. But I guess it sounds like he's doing a version of the ignorance is bliss in a way?
Yeah, to an extent. Why does the dog care? What does this have to do with dogs? This dog is talking about science for half of it, and I have no idea what that's to do with. There are 2 pages with dialogue, and this is, I'm like, okay, I like this. For some reason, you have to get through 40 pages to get there.
Yes.
Basically, he says, "Get out," I screamed, and all the louder as I had no other means of protecting myself. "All right, I'll leave you then," he said, slowly retreating. You're wonderful. Don't I please you? You'll please me by going away and leaving me in peace." Okay, that's actually a little bit funny. That made me chuckle for a little bit. This was bad. Why do people even read Kafka? I don't know if I want to check out his last three. Then there's the Burrow, In the Penal Settlement, and the Giant Mole. They sound like they might have something going on.
Well, let me ask you. So you've read 3. 2 of them you hated by the sounds of it.
Absolutely. So I think I've only sent one thing down the gutter in my time on this show in the past year, and it was a 15-page Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
This was...
So, let's figure out answers on a postcard. If anyone wants to respond live during the show, send them in with the postcards now.
Yes.
To the Grand Library. Would you read more based on the following? The 2 you've read were garbage. The 3rd one, was it good enough to make you want to read a 4th? I don't think so, was it?
That's a difficult answer. If I had read it by itself, yes.
Okay.
But because I had read these other 2, it's the exact same amount of pages. 60 pages for these 2 short stories versus the other short story, which was 60 pages.
Okay.
So, he has a chance to be decent, but I'd have to be very selective, I think. But honestly, I do want to hear from people. Message.
So you can booksboys@hotmail.com, or you can go at Booksboys Podcast on Instagram, at Booksboys Podcast on the Tickety Talks.
Yeah, if you want to
Twitter,
specifically me, I still can see on Slumber Time Podcast, my old podcasting site, and yeah, I'm very curious. Now, I will get to the story that I want to talk about, and his most famous story. Metamorphosis.
Yes,
this one was good.
This is why we know him.
This is why I wanted to read him in the first place. This one's a yeah.
Okay,
absolutely. It was good, not amazing. So basically, it starts with this guy who turned into a bug.
He metamorphosed into a bug.
Yes, that's it. That's the whole point. But I really like the first chapter. He's stuck in bed. He can't turn over because he's a giant bug on his back and tiny, hundreds of little legs. And he's worried, I'm not going to be able to get to work. Who's going to pay for my family to eat and all that? My father can barely move. He's retired. I forget what the mother situation. Daughter, his sister, he wants to send her to an emporium to study the violin and all that. But so he misses his train to get to whatever factory he works at. And then on the next train, some manager, I guess, from the company shows up at his house, knocks on the door, is he didn't come to work. Where is he?
He's a bug.
Well, no one in the family knows yet. No one's opened up the door. And so they go to the door, say, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? And it's we're going to have to break down the door because you're not answering us because you're a bug.
So I'm picturing now a massive slimy bug with a little coat and hat and briefcase going to work. I'm picturing the bug from the picture of the book.
Yeah.
But now they've put a hat and briefcase on him and he's going to the office. Please tell me that happens.
No.
Oh.
No, that does not. But imagine someone from your company shows up at your house and says, where were you?
Also, yeah, what is that?
What is that? That I thought was really interesting. Okay, so is this the Kafkaesque thing that we always hear about?
It's a very 80s thing. I feel like it's the boss turned up because someone didn't come in. Do not do that in 2024, people.
No. So I thought that was quite interesting. Then they open up the room and they see he was transformed as a bug. Everyone just absolutely terrified of him. And I think the first chapter is probably the most exciting. There's some more that happens throughout, but it doesn't stand out as much.
Okay. Why wasn't he a caterpillar and then metamorphoses again into a butterfly?
Because so they say at one point he's like a dung beetle.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting, but I always imagined him as a cockroach.
Right.
Yeah, it would have been nice if he...
What's the point? Is it a metaphor for something? Is there a moral tale?
I don't know. That's what I think could be interesting. I think it's supposed to be a horror story.
Okay.
So it says on the back here, Metamorphosis is one of the most terrifying stories ever written. A man wakes up one morning to find himself transformed into a giant insect.
And we find out why or how?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Kafka describes his reaction and the reactions of his family, at first horrified, then kind, wrathful, despising, and finally negligent. That's basically the story.
Okay.
So his sister really does care about him. She makes sure, like, she gets all the food that's she could even try testing with him because he didn't eat like the first thing that she gave, and he only likes the things that were spoiled, and any of like the milk or cheese he would just leave it. And then he tries to get some exercise. He climbs all over the walls in his bedroom, and his mother, if ever she tries to come in, he puts a sheet over himself so that she never sees him, because later on in the book, she almost has a heart attack, it seems like, when she does see him. They tried moving all the things out of his room. He's like, but I want to keep this. And they didn't like that. And the father comes back, throws like apples at him. One of them just gets lodged in him somehow.
But he can still communicate with them.
No, it doesn't seem that way.
Okay.
I thought he could in chapter 1, but chapters 2 and 3, there was no communication possible.
Because it'd be very convenient if you were a bug and you could speak. If you can't, then they might just squish you.
Yeah,
it's very big, I guess. But,
you're 6 feet long. Like, would be very difficult.
Sounds interesting. Sounds like I wouldn't mind reading it. But
I thought it was pretty fun. It's short, simple, sad ending in a way, because it is very negligent at the end, and he dies.
Spoilers.
Yes.
I can imagine this as like an old black and white horror, like one of those old style. Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I read this. This is going to be nice. Maybe we can move on to some other stories, and then trash.
Yeah.
So,
I can imagine this coupled with the likes of the Invisible Man and that type of stuff, like these old stories.
I want to maybe give like one more shot to maybe some of the others, but if all the other stories are like 40 pages apiece, and like if they're not catching me the first like 5-10 pages, I'm done.
Yeah, I think that's
more than fair. All of them are fast reads though, so even if they are trash, they're fast enough to get through.
That's good.
Yeah, but yeah, mixed feelings. Tell us what you think about Kafka. If you are a diehard fan, please let us know.
There will be some,
but then there's also like maybe those diehard fans like, oh yeah, you read those? Why?
I mean, the Metamorphosis has got to be the place to start, though, right?
It was fun. Yep. Yeah. I understand why people would like Kafka from Metamorphosis. So maybe you just have to be careful about those after.
Now, was Kafka on the shore?
No. He was not in Japan.
Not on the shore.